Today I'm going to be talking about how to crush your competition honestly and ethically. So there's kind of two schools of thought when it comes to thinking about competition. One is kind of the more subdued hippie version of it, which is like, competition's great, it's good for everybody, it encourages innovation, and there's more than enough customers in the world that, you don't need to worry too much about competition. And then there's the other school of thought, which is more of the aggressive, kind of very capitalistic view that there's only one winner, second place is, you're a loser, and there's, you have to absolutely destroy your competition. Now, what I want to kind of talk about in this episode is my view of competition, how it's changed a little bit over the years, and how you can compete heavily, yet do it in a way that still, holds true to you and your values. So here's my view of competition. When we first came out with Proposify, we were probably one of the first proposal software companies out there. There were a few that had already come out, and more had come out afterwards. But, we were there kind of in the earlier days. And at the time had sort of that hippie view of competition that, hey, it's good. There's plenty of customers for everyone. And we noticed over the years that one of our competitors, PandaDoc, has actually been very aggressive in scaling. And this is meant as a compliment to them. They raised a lot of money, they scaled up quickly, and they're very aggressively trying to take over and win the market. And we respect them for that. And so a few years after we came out, we noticed that there was a new proposal tool coming out pretty much every month, and we needed to really up our game if we wanted to stay relevant and if we wanted to be a category leader. So, one of the things we did, which I talked about in another episode, was we raised money. We've been scaling up our team, and we've been really trying to go now toe-to-toe with PandaDoc, and we're up against them a lot for deals. So, in a way we could look at it as we're just trying to crush PandaDoc. But, on the other hand, we look at it as PandaDoc was growing a few years before we were at a faster pace. And so, really they helped define the market. There's more people now that know that they need or want proposal software because PandaDoc was there helping to create the market. So my view is that competition is neither good nor bad. It's just a reality of business. And, it's like playing football. You're obviously going to have competitors. It doesn't mean you don't want to beat them. So I'm going to talk about some different ways that companies compete, especially as it relates to SaaS. So when it comes to features, that's kind of what we think of the most when we think about competition, at least from software, is, who has the most features. But really, what I found is that it's kind of a loser's game. It's almost like competing on price, right? Anybody can copy it, and it's a race to the bottom. So you don't want to just blindly copy your competitors' features. They have to be very strategically decided on based on what's actually helping your customer solve their problem, make their life easier, what's actually helping your sales team close deals. And what you'll find is usually it's less features and not more. There are certain decisions we made over the years with Proposify that were directly based off of competition. For example, our payments feature, the ability to get your proposal paid through Stripe after your deal is won, was a direct response to what the main competition was doing. So it just makes sense to release features in direct response to competition because obviously your competition are innovating based off of customer feedback and pushing features out that solve their needs. So if you see that there's a clear hole in your product where you should have been the first to do this and you're not, then you kind of have to respond to that. But at the same time, you don't want to just match every feature for feature because you're going to end up with a very clunky product that's hard to use and actually harder to sell because it's got too much in it. So if you actually offer a simpler version of an enterprise type of product, it can actually work in your favor to have way less features, but to make the whole experience a lot more smooth and simple. I'm going to throw out an example for that. So most of you probably are familiar with Trello, very widely used product, used for a lot of different purposes, but what you may or may not know is that just a few years ago, it was bought by Atlassian, which makes a product called Jira, which is kind of like a agile project management tool for big development teams. And Trello had been growing very quickly through its freemium product. So it had a paid version. It also had a freemium version. And development teams were actually using it in a way similar to Jira, to use as kind of like a Kanban style agile tool. And obviously Atlassian had seen this, and maybe potentially Trello was eating into it, or Trello was disrupting or potentially limiting their ability to sell Jira, at least to smaller development teams. So it was actually a really smart acquisition of Atlassian to do. Now, Trello was only at around $12 million in annual recurring revenue when they bought them for a mind-blowing $425 million, which you may be interested to know Atlassian's revenue for last year was only about over $600 million. So it was almost the price of their annual revenue they bought Trello for. You may wonder, why would they buy a company for so much money that was only doing about $12 million? Well, obviously, Atlassian had seen that Trello was a threat. They needed to own it, and they were future-proofing their own business. And that was because Trello decided to go super simple and not try to be an enterprise tool. So if you can't compete on features and you can't compete on price, how do you actually compete, and how do you win out above your competitors? Well, I believe that the strongest brand is what wins in the end. When you think about brand, you think about products that become so synonymous with their product category that that's what you call it, even if it's not the product. For example, Kleenex. A lot of people don't say, hand me a tissue, they say, hand me a Kleenex. So Kleenex is synonymous with tissues. People are saying, I Ubered to the airport, as opposed to I booked through my booking app and got a ride using a ride sharing service. So if you build a strong enough brand, that can actually help you win out and become the leader in your category, because that's how people perceive you. Now, a brand isn't something you can build overnight. The Nike swoosh didn't become recognizable overnight. It took many, many years of building Nike to get it to that point. So your brand isn't something that you can just spin out and all of a sudden become a leader. It's something you have to actively work to nurture. And a brand, like a reputation, also isn't something that you're in total control of. You can do things to guide your brand and help it to grow in the way you want it to, but you're not in complete control of it. We always think about the weak brands being the airlines that people are tweeting about, them losing their luggage, or the flight attendant being rude on a flight and people are recording it with their phones. Like, those are kind of PR disasters that weaken your brand. And even Uber, who I just mentioned, they've become synonymous with ride sharing, but even their brand has suffered in recent years because of their weak HR, their weak policies that have hurt employees. So PR disasters can really hurt your brand. But I believe that the way to build the strongest brand is to build the best customer experience. And that could be the product. It could be your customer service. It could be basically everything that people think about when they see your company, or they see an ad, or they actually use your product. When you look at Airbnb, for example, there's a really great article that I'm going to link to in the notes about how Airbnb tries to build a 10-star experience. So when you book on Airbnb, you can book up to or you can rate a 5-star experience. And what they basically say is, well, that just means it didn't suck. It didn't suck so bad that you got 4 stars. And what the way they think about their company is, what would it take to get a 6-star or a 7-star experience? And they kind of detail things that are a little bit, way over the top, nothing that they could ever actually do, but it just shows that as a company, they're trying to build a 10-star experience. And that is a big reason why their brand is so strong. Should you try to steal customers away from your competition? I think that if you're a brand new startup and you're just trying to learn about the market, it makes a lot of sense to actually go after the big incumbents, the category leaders, and try to talk to their customers and figure out maybe there's something they're lacking, or maybe they've gotten too bloated and too complicated, and there's a huge segment of customers that actually want something simpler. But once you kind of get to a growth stage, if your primary growth strategy is to try to steal customers away from your competition, it's a loser's game. You're playing the defense, and what you really want to be playing is the offense. You want to be building, like I said, the strongest brand, the strongest customer experience, so that your company is like a lighthouse that attracts people, rather than you trying to, go on social media and pull them away from products or companies that they're already using. I want to talk about another example of Mint versus Wasabi. So if you're not familiar with those companies, Mint.com, it's a personal finance tracking app. It's been around for a long time, and essentially you put your banking information into it, your debit card, and it pulls out all your finances and kind of shows you where you're spending money. Now, they actually had a competitor that was first to market called Wasabi, and very quickly after Mint came out, they completely dominated. Wasabi closed their doors, and Mint got purchased by Intuit for a large amount of money. What's really interesting is that the CEO of Wasabi detailed why he thinks that Wasabi lost to Mint in an article. Again, I'm going to link to that so you can read that and check it out. But essentially what he says is that there was two things. One was that Mint was a very design-focused brand. You know, it looked very clean, it looked very trustworthy, and essentially people felt good about putting their banking information into it. So they kind of led with brand, and they also provided a more simple, streamlined customer experience because you didn't have to do a lot of work as the user to categorize your finances. Mint would automatically do it for you, even though it wasn't necessarily as accurate as Wasabi. It was less work, which ultimately people want in the end. So I think it's great that the CEO detailed this in an article. It's from a while back, but you know, it's if you do have a company that folds due to something like a company like Mint taking over the market, it's really nice when founders can just kind of put their ego aside and be very transparent so that other people can learn from it. Sometimes competitors play nicely, and sometimes they butt heads. We experienced this at Proposify. We were down a couple of years ago. Our service was down for about 20 minutes, and we noticed that actually PandaDoc had posted on Twitter, "Hey, Proposify got you down. Come check out our product." It got everybody in the office really pissed off and heated. And, we were kind of tempted to respond back, especially since they were down maybe a few months later or a few weeks later. We were tempted to respond in kind. And, shout out to Jen Faulkner, our head of communications at Proposify. She's a big fan of the Michelle Obama quote, which is, when they go low, we go high. So as a general communication policy, we don't get into the mud and start slagging off our competitors. It's not how we operate, and it's not part of our brand. Now, even bigger companies can sometimes get tempted to do this. If you haven't checked this out before, Slack actually had written a letter and put it in the New York Times about Microsoft. So Microsoft launched a competing service, a chat service that was essentially, a Slack clone. And instead of kind of just shrugging it off and not really responding, Slack actually posted this detailed letter to Microsoft about their chat service. And it was really kind of condescending. It made them, it probably had the opposite effect of what they had intended. Was it made them actually seem insecure, saying things like, "Hey, we're sure you'll come out with a couple of neat ideas yourself one day." It was just, it didn't make them look good. It put them on the defensive. It didn't put them on the offense. So when you're small, you're probably chasing a Goliath of a company. You're trying to compete with the big guys. And then what you might find is if you have success, you actually become the Goliath that now other smaller, scrappier startups are trying to compete with, and they're throwing rocks at you just like David. The interesting thing here is that you can see this across multiple different companies. Using SaaS as an example, you can see companies like HubSpot and Intercom and Drift that are all on a race, I feel, to become a competitor with Salesforce. Salesforce is the big incumbent, and a lot of companies that are in the B2B software sales space want to compete heavily with Salesforce. And the thing is, once you become a big company, it actually becomes harder to innovate. Even though you might have a lot more employees, you're now a little bit slower. There's more systems and there's more processes, and it can be actually hard to out-innovate your competition. So that's why big companies, you would have seen companies like Google and Salesforce make a lot of M&A, a lot of mergers and acquisitions, because it's one of the ways that they can stay competitive. They can carve out a niche in a new product category without having to put in the years of effort it would take to actually build it themselves. So just to recap everything I covered, this is a bit of a longer episode. Competition, it's not really good or bad. It's just a reality. You have to live in it. You have to play with it. You don't have to necessarily become the number one. There is place for 2 and 3. but it's important to stay ahead of the game, stay competitive. Competition can actually help define your market category. So just because you have a better funded competitor that's maybe a few years ahead of you, they can actually be helping you. Feature wars are unwinnable. You can't compete on features alone. Features are easy to copy. You need to compete on brand and customer experience as a way to grow your company. And, publicly slagging off your competitors just makes you look bad. It's not effective, and you're better off playing the offense. And finally, as companies get bigger, they look at M&A and acquiring other companies. So if you're building a simpler version of an enterprise product, you may actually be able to get acquired by one of your competitors like Trello did with Atlassian. So how do you think about competition? Do you think that it's a winner-take-all market, or do you think competition is good for everyone, you dirty hippie? Thank you so much for watching this. Be sure to let me know in the comments below, and bye for now.
This episode of Lifetime Value is brought to you by Proposify. Proposify improves sales productivity so your team spends less time creating proposals and more time selling. Start your free trial at proposify.com. And be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a single episode.